Bonjour, j'aimerais remercier les membres du comité de m'avoir permis de faire ces remarques d'ouverture. Mes remarques porteront sur mon rôle et mes responsabilités en tant que sous-ministre de la Justice et sous-procureur général du Canada, mes relations professionnelles avec l'honorable Jody Wilson-Raybould, ainsi que j'exposerai ma chronologie des événements. À titre de sous-ministre et sous-procureur général du Canada, j'appuie là où le ministre de la Justice et procureur général ainsi que le gouvernement dans le développement de leur politique. Dans l'exercice de mes fonctions, ma vision a toujours été de fournir au gouvernement des services juridiques de grande valeur. S'appuyant sur le rôle traditionnel des juristes, j'encourage le personnel juridique du ministère de la Justice à instaurer une alliance stratégique avec les clients afin de travailler en partenariat à la recherche de solutions et à l'obtention de résultats. In my role, I have the privilege of working with highly competent and impressive individuals. The former minister and Attorney General and I had a very positive working relationship. I commend her for what she brought and brings to Canada in her role in public office. I can tell you that I learned very much and a lot working with her, especially in terms of Indigenous issues and lawmaking. In fact, we continue the work she began at Justice Canada by taking a new approach to Indigenous litigation. I hold myself and my staff to the highest standards of providing nonpartisan advice. My role is supporting the ministers and Attorney General demands that I uphold the values and ethics expected of me, both as a public servant and as a lawyer. I would like to begin by describing my dual role as a Deputy Minister of Justice and Deputy Attorney General. I have been in this position since June 2017. In both these roles, I support the Minister of Justice in fulfilling his or her responsibility. My functions include giving legal advice and coordinating the legal advice given by the Department of Justice, supporting the development of legislation and policy that fall within the justice portfolio, as well as acting as the formal representative of the Crown in all civil litigation involving the Government of Canada. In addition to my support, the Attorney General of Canada is also supported by the Director of Public Prosecutions, who is also a Deputy Attorney General of Canada. The DPP and I do not report to each other. It is not my role to discuss specific prosecutions with her, and I have not discussed the substance of the SNC-Lavalin prosecution with her. However, I do provide advice to the Attorney General of Canada in her or his decision-making as to whether or not to issue directives to the Director of Public Prosecution or to assume the conduct of a federal criminal prosecution. In such situation, I approach giving legal advice in the same way I would when giving advice on any other statute, but with careful attention to the distinction between my job and the job of the DPP. Monsieur le Président, comme le permet le décret rendu par la gouverneure générale en Conseil le 25 février dernier, je voudrais maintenant fournir au comité un compte-rendu détaillé de mes interactions dans ce dossier. Je fournis ce compte-rendu au meilleur de ma connaissance. Pour ce faire, j'ai examiné mes courriels, mes dossiers et mon agenda. Je n'ai pas consulté Mme Wilson-Raybould, je n'ai pas consulté le ministre Lametti, ni leur personnel, ni quiconque à l'extérieur du ministère au sujet des faits qui me sont propres. Mon compte-rendu inclura notamment les détails des discussions que j'ai eues avec l'ancienne procureure générale du Canada concernant l'exercice de ses pouvoirs en vertu de la loi sur le directeur des poursuites criminelles et pénales. Le 4 septembre, le ministère a eu connaissance de la position de la directrice de continuer la poursuite intentée contre SNC-Lavalin. J'aimerais préciser qu'à ce jour, je ne sais toujours pas comment ni quand la position de la directrice fut partagée avec SNC-Lavalin. Le 5 septembre, comme j'ai mentionné, j'ai examiné mon agenda au meilleur de mes capacités. Mon agenda indique que le 5 septembre, j'ai eu une conversation téléphonique avec M. Paul Rochon, sous-ministre des Finances. Toutefois, je ne peux me souvenir si nous avons parlé de ce dossier, d'un autre dossier qui était très chaud à l'époque ou des deux dossiers. De plus, d'après mes souvenirs, la première discussion que j'ai eue avec Mme Wilson-Raybould sur ce dossier a eu lieu le 5 septembre en fin d'après-midi. Le sujet de l'appel était de discuter d'un autre dossier, mais je me souviens que SNC a aussi été évoqué. L'ancienne procureure générale était à Fidji et il y avait un décalage horaire de 17 heures. 2 employés de son bureau, Jessica Prince, chef de cabinet, et Emma Carver, attachée politique, se sont jointes à l'appel. Nous avons convenu que le ministère fournirait des conseils sur le rôle du procureur général aux fins d'examen par la procureure générale. Je leur ai dit que le ministère avait commencé à travailler sur cet avis la veille. September 6th and 7th. For the 2 next days, my official and I developed a written advice. I also provided verbal advice to the AG staff, Emma Carver and François Giroux, on the Attorney General's power under the Director of Public Prosecution Act. I advised that it would be very important for the Attorney General to be comfortable with the Director position to not pursue a remediation agreement. I emphasized that the Attorney General was entitled to receive as much information as she considered necessary from the Director. It was during the course of these conversations with Emma Carver and François Giroux that they read to me the extract of the Section 13 letter from the DPP. For clarity, a Section 13 letter from a DPP to the Attorney General is to inform the Attorney General in a timely manner of any prosecution or intervention that the DPP intends to make that raises important questions of general interest. As I have explained to the committee, in fulfilling my role as Deputy AG, I am very careful to separate my role and responsibility from that of my counterpart, the Director of Public Prosecutions. As I have mentioned, I have no role in specific criminal prosecution and am not privy to any of the evidence. This is why I refuse to review and receive the Section 13 letter. It was during the same conversation that Emma Carver informed me that she was drafting a document that she intended to provide to her counterparts at the Prime Minister office. I was also told that the Attorney General was not keen on the idea of exercising her authorities under the DPP Act. In her testimony, the former minister mentioned that I had conveyed information from the Department of Finance. To clarify, on September 7, I spoke with the Deputy Minister of Finance, Paul Rochon, and he had questions regarding the decision-making process and the roles and relationship of the AG and the Director of Public Prosecutions. Also, on September 7, I spoke to the former Attorney General's Chief of Staff and provided her a verbal outline of what we were drafting for the AG's consideration. On September 8, I provided a draft opinion to the former AG's office. The opinion is entitled, "The Power of the Attorney General to Issue Directives and to Assume Conduct of Proceedings." Sorry. The opinion begins with a discussion of the Attorney General's independence and her ultimate responsibility for criminal prosecutions. It describes the role of the DPP in much the same way I have explained to this committee. It also describes the power to assume conduct of a prosecution and the power to issue directive. The opinion also provides advice to the AG on the role of the DPP and that the AG is entitled to receive information from the DPP in order to understand the decision. Various options are set out in the situation where the AG either disagrees with the director's position or wishes to further assess the decision. These options include the issuance of directives that direct reconsideration or appoint a specific prosecutor to reassess. Another option covered is for the AG to decide to assume conduct of a prosecution, consider whether statutory conditions for remediation agreement are met, and if so, appoint an agent to negotiate such an agreement. The legal opinion also canvasses the possibility of seeking outside advice with respect to the AG's power under the Act and the Criminal Code in order to assess whether the conditions for a remediation agreement are met. The legal opinion advises that the relevant constitutional and statutory framework prioritize independence and transparency, and that any decision by the AG is hers to make, independent of the political consideration or processes. There is also a short discussion of the deference by courts to prosecutorial discretion, which can be reviewed only for abuse of process. Je voudrais apporter un peu de contexte à cette partie de mes remarques. Bien que je suis à Justice Canada depuis presque 3 ans, vous savez que j'ai également exercé des fonctions similaires au Québec. Durant cette période, j'ai acquis une expertise dans ce domaine puisque j'ai été confrontée à des situations similaires dans lesquelles les décisions du directeur des poursuites criminelles et pénales ont été contestées publiquement et où le procureur général a été interpellé. J'ai judicieusement mis cette expérience professionnelle et cette expertise au service de l'avis que mon ministère a fourni à la procureure générale dans cette affaire. Le 10 septembre, le ministère a répondu à 2 questions complémentaires que nous avions reçues du bureau de la procureure générale à la suite de l'avis préliminaire. Le 11 septembre, le chef par intérim du cabinet de la procureure générale, M. François Giroux, m'a informé par courriel que la procureure générale n'avait pas l'intention d'intervenir dans le dossier et qu'elle était disponible pour en discuter avec moi. Le 12 septembre, le lendemain, le ministère des Finances m'indique que SNC-Lavalin était toujours en discussion avec le DPP. J'en ai donc compris que la position de la DPP d'inviter SNC à négocier un accord de réparation n'était pas définitive. On September 12 or 19, and I would like to be more precise, but I don't have any evidence on that, I have a discussion occur with the clerk on the margin of a weekly meeting that we call the DM breakfast. I recall that I had a discussion with the clerk where we discussed options that the AG had available to her, her role, the DPP's roles, as well as my role. On September 16, I had a call with PCO where we would have discussed also the advice of the AG. To the best of my recollection, my first face-to-face meeting with the former Attorney General on this file was September 17, and I believe we may have only briefly discussed it on the margin of another meeting. I also saw the minister on September 18 and 19. On September 18, the only purpose of the meeting was for the minister to debrief on her meeting the day before with the Prime Minister. I do not recall her specific words, but I remember her telling me that the clerk was present. She also expressed to me that she was not comfortable with the content of this conversation. September 19. During my bilat on the afternoon of September 19 with the former AG, she told me that she just had a discussion with the clerk. During the same meeting, I clearly recall that the former AG said to me that this would be the last time we discussed the SNC-Lavalin matter, and she also instructed me not to have any discussion with the DPP. To the best of my knowledge, and to be clear, after September 19, I did not have any further involvement on this file with the minister and her staff, with 2 exceptions. Je tiens à préciser qu'au meilleur de mes souvenirs, je n'ai pas eu de contact avec la ministre ou son personnel au sujet de ce dossier après le 19 septembre, sauf à 2 exceptions près. La première exception a eu lieu le 19 octobre, lorsque la demande de contrôle judiciaire de la décision de la DPP a été déposée devant la Cour fédérale. Comme ce serait le cas pour les procédures régulières dans lesquelles une demande de contrôle judiciaire est présentée à la Cour, les fonctionnaires de mon ministère ont discuté avec la DPP au sujet de qui devrait comparaître au nom de la Couronne. La deuxième exception s'est produite vers la fin du mois d'octobre. Je n'ai pas la date exacte. Le bureau du conseil privé a demandé un avis à mon ministère sur les conséquences possibles pour SNC-Lavalin d'une condamnation au criminel. Mon ministère avait élaboré un projet d'avis juridique. cet avis n'a pas été fourni au bureau du conseil privé à la demande du bureau de la ministre. Finally, before completing my chronology, I would like to return briefly to the time I first became aware of the January 14 shuffle. And again, I would like to, for the record, to say that I haven't discussed this testimony with the clerk. On Friday, January 11, the clerk of the Privy Council called to inform me of the upcoming shuffle. I was not told who the new minister would be. I proactively asked the clerk what areas or files I should be preparing to brief for the new minister. The clerk identified briefings the new minister and Attorney General on roles and responsibility as the primary need. This indicated to me that we were going to be receiving a first-time minister. The clerk also recommended that I brief the new minister on Indigenous files because the Prime Minister could ask the new minister to attend a meeting with Indigenous organizations early next week. He also recommended briefing the minister on current issue, including remediation agreement and SNC. As you are aware, SNC-Lavalin has sought a judicial review and the DPP decision, so it was a live issue for the new minister to be made aware of. To brief the new minister, I developed, with the assistance of my immediate team, a briefing handbook, which I am tabling here today. Je pense que vous avez les documents avec vous, autant en français qu'en anglais, pour être circulés aux membres. You will notice in the handbook that the remediation agreement is also included. It was in this context that on the afternoon of January 11th, I informed Jessica Prince, whom I thought was remaining the Chief of Staff, that we will need to brief the new minister on. Je vous remercie pour votre attention. Je sais que j'ai dépassé un peu mon temps et je suis disposée à répondre à vos questions.